So whenever you are ready.
Great, and I'm just going to share my screen here. Can you all see that? Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our discussion of trauma-informed practices. My name is Kyle Zintars. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New York and a senior counselor at the Counseling Center.
Takara, do you want to talk about outreach too?
Oh yeah, and I do a bunch of outreach and training for our peer educator team. So you'll see me at different programs, workshops, presentations throughout the campus.
And I'm Takara Watson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, also a counselor here at SUNY Oswego Counseling Center. And I'm also the training coordinator here. So I provide both training and supervision along with other providers here as well in terms of supervising graduate students who are wanting to be therapists.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to set this up by saying we have 20 minutes to talk about a very big topic. And I think we both were kind of recognizing how big and broad this could become. So we have some tips, strategies that we want to convey throughout this, but we are acknowledging right off the bat that you might be left with a lot of questions or need more conversation and discussion. So please reach out to us if you want to further that conversation or get other answers that maybe we haven't addressed in here. But this is a big topic and one that's very prevalent right now. So I figured to start, I think it's important that we always settle and just kind of come into the space and into the focus that we have in the present moment. So whatever this means to you, just get comfortable in your seat. And for some of you, that could be putting your feet on the floor. For others, it's just adjusting your posture and your positioning. You might be sitting in some position that isn't as comfortable. And just kind of notice where you're holding tension, notice how your body feels, and just allow yourself to shift towards comfort and settling. For some of you, this next part might be done with your eyes closed, if you're comfortable with that. If you're not comfortable with that, just finding a fixed spot in your room to look at. And what we're going to do is just start with a nice deep breath in. And then a very slow exhale out. Another deep breath in, a little bit bigger this time. And slow breath out. And as your body's starting to relax a little bit, just listen to it. If it needs a little shift, if you need to wheel your shoulders out, move your legs or feet, toes, your hands, just listen to it. Go with what feels right for you. And I want you to notice one thing that you are physically touching right now. Some of you, that could be a chair or a table. Others, that could be clothing, something that you're wearing. And just notice anything that's touching your body, anything that you are connected to, grounded to. And we'll take one more deep breath in, a little bit bigger this time. And then a nice slow breath out. And thank you all for being a part of that. So we'll start with some considerations. And I think we're going to be talking about trauma in general. We're not going to be going into traumatic experiences and the details and specifics of those. But for people who are approaching topics, whether that's in a class discussion, in a current events discussion, maybe with staff or peers that you might be in charge of or supervising, I think it's really important to just call attention to the fact that when we experience or observe trauma, it's very disruptive to our system. So just some considerations, even in this space as we're talking, we're going to try and practice some of these, but as you move forward, pay attention to how much exposure to trauma you might be introducing in your conversations and your material for your course. And try and condense that into these small moments of exposure where we're not burning people out with it. We're not overwhelming their nervous system so much with too much at once. Allowing flexibility for how people respond. So even as you're participating in this conversation here, you might need to take a few breaths here and there. We might be carrying a lot with us, especially with current events that have been going on. Just pay attention to what you need. And if that is looking away briefly, if that's getting up and walking around, if that's stretching, just pay attention to those things that you know you need for yourself. And I think it's good to introduce those for the spaces that we will be a part of in the future. So encouraging different responses to these conversations and discussions. It's very common for people to need to close their eyes just to cut out some of the sensory intake, or having some kind of physical distraction like drawing and writing that can be really helpful. And for some, leaving the room gives them a choice. They get agency and the ability to react and respond how they need to. So know that that can be a really helpful tool. Checking in with people. So just seeing how people are responding to what's going on, the topics that's being discussed, or maybe some of the trauma information that is arising in conversations. Checking in, making sure people have the ability to check in with you if something was upsetting or unsettling. Try your best to not leave things unpacked. I know in the academic world, we are constantly rushing through things and moving on to the next thing. But for a lot of people, bringing up a very traumatic experience or something that holds a lot of gravity and weight, it can be very disturbing and unsettling to someone. So just giving the time necessary to kind of repackage things, allow people to pick themselves back up again, I think can be really important before they enter the world outside of whatever your conversation might have been. And then knowing what kind of resources are available for support if the disruption is too heavy, because we don't know how people are going to respond to things. So if you have the resources available to offer support, that's always beneficial. And we'll talk a little bit about how you don't have to be everything for everyone. So just knowing what's available so that you can ease that can be really helpful.
So as Kyle said a little bit earlier, so I won't go through all of this since we are on a time constraint, but SAMHSA does describe trauma as, in terms of an individual trauma resulting from an event, series of events, or circumstances. It could be physical or emotionally harmful or life-threatening to an individual, and it can have lasting adverse effects. So trauma is here. Trauma is prevalent in our world. It's happening every day. And because it's such a high number, around 70% of people have experienced a traumatic event, it is likely that students that you do come across, in whatever capacity that may be, will have a trauma history as well. So again, I won't go through the big T's, little T's, but just some things that may pop up in terms of students and what they may be experiencing. It can include physical violence that they have past to current, a major loss. It could be having a diagnosis of a terminal illness or chronic illness. It could be racism, sexism that they're experiencing. The war in Ukraine can have a huge impact on them, to even just the adjustment to moving here and being on campus, being in a new environment can also be traumatic for our students. So being able to keep that in mind of what our students may be carrying is really important in understanding the impact that that may be having and how it's playing out in the classroom, but and also in other settings. You can switch it up. Oh, I froze. Okay, in terms of scope of practice, so what is things that you can do and what without going into being a therapist. So being able to show empathy and compassion to our students, actively listening, being engaged with them in terms of what they may be saying to you, and being able to connect with them is huge for our students. And doing your own research and learning around what trauma is and how it impacts learning, how it impacts maybe productivity, and other even thinking about concentration and focus, just how it impacts an individual or a collective student body in your classes. Knowing what resources exist beyond your scope. So as Kyle alluded to, so being able to access the counseling center to even consult. You can call anytime and say, I have this student, even if it's remaining anonymous, I don't know how to get them over to you all. They've been disclosing a lot of stuff that they've been going through and managing. That can be something that we can definitely be able to do. And that extends beyond just in the classroom, but again, different offices. Create safety in your classes. So I always put safety in quotes because that means so many things from so many different people. And will there always be always continuous sense of safety? That's also to be determined, right? But being able to just do some of these things of showing empathy, showing compassion, being grounded, listening, and showing that you care does create that atmosphere for students to be able to know that this is a place where they may not be marked as a fail or what have you, if there is an understanding from, say, a professor or an instructor. And I just realized the time, so I'll go through some of these. But being able to just get an understanding of how much you're asking of your students in terms of expectations, what you want from them, and asking students what they need to be successful or present in your classroom. So some students, if they are connected, but also have their own awareness, may say maybe it's taking a few breaths before it start of class or the end of class, could be something that could be helpful. And some things not to do, so act as a counselor. So we do not expect for you to be able to hold and give. I'm just thinking trauma-informed therapy modalities or anything like that. So being able to, and I'll talk about this in another slide, of ways to be able to have that conversation with the student to get them over to us. And you also don't need to save the student or solve all of their problems. And as human beings, and we are in this work because we care in some capacity, for our students, but knowing that being this safe entity and them going to you, it's a lot, and not needing to absolve or solve all that they may be struggling with.
And I compiled a list of activities that might be useful for creating safety in different experiences, whether that's in a classroom setting or, like I said, in a meeting of peers or supervisees, whoever you might be really connected to. And Takara, I think you phrased it really well. It isn't necessarily about having to be everything for everyone. And I think the more that we are exploring mental health in our current state of the world, the more we're realizing this is a community effort and we are all a part of it. So I know for faculty and staff, even taking care of their own traumatic experiences becomes really vital. And knowing that other people have shared experiences and have the ability to offer support can be really helpful and ease some of the pressure that we're all carrying. So I know we all need access to those kind of resources as well. So I won't spend too much time going through each of these, but I did want to highlight at least some of them. And I will put this presentation in the chat so that you have access to it. So if we don't get to anything and you just want the ideas, they will be there for you. But I think those grounding techniques can be really useful when it comes to just settling people. I like to think of stress, especially as an accumulation throughout the day. And the more interruptions of that accumulation we have, the less of an impact it's going to make on our overall sense of being. So even those small grounding techniques of, I raced over to get to my class and unpack all my stuff to get set up for the class that I'm supposed to be teaching. Can we all, as a collective, just practice a very small grounding technique, breathing exercise, the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise, which is calling attention to our different senses, just something that helps us all to settle, because We learn better, we teach better, we communicate better when we are all settled and in our calm state of mind and state of being. So make sure that you are emphasizing that for yourself as well if you are in some kind of leadership position, but also encouraging other people to practice those, to slow things down a little bit, especially in this very big rush of an academic world we live in. Breaking up stress levels. So paying attention to those time slots in a class might be really important. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by information too much at once. So can we just break it up into smaller sections and allow for people to have different experiences, whether that's participating in polls or surveys, whether that's asking for people's perspectives and opinions verbally, or if it's just allowing for group interaction to happen where people can build support. I'll stress here, I've called them trigger warnings in this presentation. I think it's also just allowing students to know what they are entering into. My background is in mental health, but it's also with English and literature specifically. And I think for a lot of times when we're reading a text that had to do with sexual assault, I can see where that would be really upsetting and disruptive to a student who has experienced that, especially if it's recent. So just allowing students to know what they're walking into helps them to make good choices for themselves. And being flexible about that can be really helpful for a trauma experience, but also help to create support. You're acknowledging that someone's experience is not easy and that it's okay for them to choose what to engage with and what not to engage with. And then finally, compassionate teaching. I think if you are here, the chances are you're practicing this to some extent because you were drawn to this topic, but just being able to see from other people's perspectives how the environment might be impacting them, how the discussion might be impacting them, how the amount of work that someone is being asked to do is impacting them. All of that compassion, empathy, that understanding that what part we play and what part other people play helps us to make choices and to set up, I think, relationships and environments that work for everybody. So ask yourself those kind of questions. Is what's being asked of other people entirely necessary? Is there the ability to be flexible with this? Is there an ability to check in with other students to make sure that they're doing okay? So really just engaging in those kind of practices helps to set up some safety as well. And I'll move on to the next one because, oh my God, this is flying.
So lastly, we referenced resources before, but how to refer your students over to us. So the three main things are listen, sympathize, and refer. So say that a student comes to you after class or before class or sends you an email disclosing something traumatic that has happened to them, or you see that they're visibly in distress, is being able to, again, actively listen to what they're saying, experiencing, and also being grounded in just your own calmness, but also being human of saying, wow, that sounds like that's really awful, or that really, really sucks what's happening. So there goes the sympathizing piece of it, and being able to say, you know what, my role here with you is as your professor, but I do know a resource on campus that you could utilize, the counseling center, where you could talk to someone who is professional, who is licensed, that you could be able to further discuss, talk about options if that's something you would want to do, and being able to connect them in that way. Sometimes they may be reluctant, they may be scared, they may have not even heard of the counseling center, they may not know how to even take the first steps. So sometimes that is being present while they make that phone call. It could be walking with them to the counseling center. It could be looking through the website together, just to be able to familiarize what that is, what that resource is for that student. That can be a game changer. And with that said, to be able to have more information in your pocket about who we are. So we do offer individual, but we also offer group therapy services as well. So if a student's like, I don't know about making an appointment, I'm not so sure about that, we do have walk-in services, walk-in/crisis services. So if a student during business hours want to talk to a provider here, they would be able to walk in and meet with a therapist that day. We also have Let's Talk, which is consultation based. So it's about 20 minutes. Some people use it as an introduction, excuse me, to therapy, to say, what the heck is the counseling center? Who are you? What would I expect? And other people use it for convenience, as like, because sometimes it's located in the residence hall, but it's being able to have that connection with the therapist and talk about something that may be going on. So that's going to definitely be either a first step or something that they utilize ongoing. Sometimes that has been happening too. And then there's after hours. So the 24/7, 365, they would call our number, press 2, and they would be able to talk to a therapist after hours through our service contact. And our office would reach out the next day and be able to talk to the student to see if they, well, 1, how the phone call went, 2, what's going on, and 3, if they would like to connect with us. So we would be able to touch base with that student. And consultation, lastly, if you all are like, I still don't know how to talk to the student, or this is going on, the student may not want to be connected, they want to remain anonymous, I just want to talk this out with one of you all, that is why we're here. So please don't hesitate to contact us if it's necessary or needed, even if it's just your curiosity about who we are and what we offer. We are more than happy to be able to answer that for you. Or if it's picking up brochures about different topics that we have out in the waiting room, or picking up a Let's Talk schedule, that's definitely available. I think I got it all, Kyle.
I think you got it. I think you got it. So I put our references in here. And like I said, I'm going to put this in the chat so that everybody has access to it. All of these are clickable as well. So you'll be able to go right to the resources that you might need. I highly recommend listening to Karen Costa on the T for Teaching podcast about trauma-informed pedagogy. It was phenomenal, and I highly recommend that for other people who are just trying to implement this in their classroom discussions. But we've tried to include some for just different experiences on a college campus. I know not everybody might be faculty. And if anybody wants to stick around, we can answer some questions, but I know we were only scheduled for 20 minutes, so thank you for being here. Let's see, I see something in the chat.
Thank you so much.